Happy Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 Day. Yes, both Mario Galaxies 1 and 2 are now on Nintendo Switch 1 and Nintendo Switch 2 for you to purchase and replay if you've played them before or played them for the first time if you haven't. I know a lot of you were probably expecting some sort of Mario Galaxy content for the day, but you gotta give me some time to replay these games to get fresh in my mind. I mean, I played them 100 times, but it's been a little bit longer for Galaxy 2, so I'll at least be playing that first before I start talking about them. But with Mario Galaxy 2 now coming to Switch, there's technically only one more 3D Mario game that we need. Well, technically there's two more if you want to count Mario 64 on the DS. Now Mario 64 has been brought back thanks to Mario 3D All-Stars, so you can play the original 64 game on your Switch or Switch 2 right now, but we never did get Mario 64's DS version, which is actually technically a better version in my opinion of Mario 64, but the controls hold it back. So to have better controls and obviously modern graphics would make this game probably the best version of Mario 64 ever, and almost like a new remake of 64 personally. But unfortunately, I don't think Nintendo's ever going to bother with this game. I think they'd rather just completely remake the game sometime in the far future where they just have a complete from the ground up remake of Mario 64. Almost a reimagining would be pretty cool, honestly. And the thing is, the game actually has some new content. Like, it has new playable characters with Yoshi, Wario, and Luigi, and they all have their own special abilities. Not to mention, there's also some extra levels and boss battles added to this game. So yeah, there's some cool quality of life changes and gameplay changes as well that I think could be really cool to see on Switch. But no, okay, I'm getting carried away. We're talking about one other game today. Super Mario 3D Land is the final 3D Mario game we need on modern hardware, but it actually seems like Nintendo has forgotten about 3D Land. Now, this game came out for the 3DS, so it was meant to be a basic version of what a 3D Mario game could be on home console, because as we would see some years later, that they would give us a full version called Mario 3D World, which would give us multiplayer, bigger and more expansive worlds and levels, and more collectibles, more power-ups. It was literally just the bigger and better version in every single way. So why do people want to go back to one that's less? I'll be honest, I too was asking this a while ago, just saying, why do people want this game so bad? Because it's just a very basic, super linear 3D Mario game compared to anything that we've seen before. It was made for the 3DS, for a handheld console. They knew it wasn't going to be as big or as expansive as something a home console could have. So why do people want this even today on something like the Nintendo Switch? How would Nintendo even resell this? Well, they'd probably sell it for $70 knowing them. But before we get into the how, let's talk about the why. Why do fans want this game back? Well, I went back and replayed it, and something that I realized right away is that this game is made from the ground up to be focused on a single player. The platforming with the placement of objects, items, and just the stages themselves are placed in such a precise way to focus on a single player. That's why it's tighter in platforming compared to something like Mario 3D World, where lots of its levels are more open-ended, built around the fact that you can play with a total of 4 players. 3D Land's levels are just tighter, and some even believe them to be a lot better designed than some of the levels and worlds from Mario 3D World because of that factor. And I will admit, there are some things that they do in 3D Land that you just cannot do in 3D World, simply due to the fact that there's so many characters on screen in that game. With one game focusing on one single character moving, you can do a lot more with the level design. For instance, there's stages that has you blasting out of cannons, or maybe climbing through sections of a cave that you couldn't do with a bunch of people on screen, or maybe even a stage where you're walking over flip panels and they're building a path for you. I personally really love 3D Land and what it was able to do, but I can also acknowledge that it wasn't a perfect game. For instance, one of my biggest issues were the boss battles. They are extremely forgettable, having you simply jump on a switch like classic 2D Mario in order to take down Bowser at the end of each world, or taking out Boom Boom and Pom Pom, which is literally going to happen in less than 15 seconds. Also, if you're an experienced player, completing the game all the way through 100%, even going through the bonus levels and bonus world, is probably going to take you around 4 to 5 hours if you know what you're doing, around 6 to 7 if you're maybe a newcomer. Now, I will say, I was asking for Galaxy 2 to come to Nintendo Switch for a while, and I knew that the only way it was going to be able to do so if Nintendo found out a way to sell Galaxy 2, but with something else or some type of new addition in order to justify a re-release. And we saw that they actually just decided to resell Galaxy again for a second time understand why. But I guess with bundling Galaxy 1 with Galaxy 2, this allowed them to have a physical version. But if you want to just digitally download one of these games, you can just get Galaxy 2 for $40, but you can just get Galaxy 2 if you want to. So let's think about it. How could Nintendo bring back Mario 3D Land? They could just make it a digital game only, of course, sure. But how could they justify a physical release as well? Well, what if they bundled it with something else very similar? Another 3D Mario platformer that's single player focused and also only available on a handheld console. Exactly. Mario Pinball Land. Obviously Mario 64 for the DS. This would just make too much sense, and it's the last two games remaining. Yes, you've already released Mario 64 through 3D All-Stars, but I mean, if you can re-release Galaxy 1 again, pretty much in the exact same state, why can't you re-release Mario 64, which had a second completely different version as well? This just makes almost too much sense. I mean, this is just money for Nintendo. Personally, I kind of hope that they do something like this. It's only like $60, $30 a game since they're both DS games, you know? I feel like that would be the most reasonable thing to do here. Plus, Mario 64 DS is undoubtedly going to take you more time to complete, and I like also how they're two completely different games, where Mario 64 DS is a 3D sandbox game, where Mario 3D Land is a linear 3D Mario game, and having one of each in a pack could be pretty cool. But what if Nintendo says, no, I don't want to do anything with Mario 64 DS, and that game is pretty much done? They could simply just do a remake of Mario 3D Land, and almost like a reimagining, adding a bunch of new levels, kind of changing up some of the levels, adding some more, obstacles or something, maybe adding a couple new power-ups, some bonus levels, actual boss battles, kind of like Mario 3D World had. Stuff like that would be an awesome way to bring back Mario 3D Land. Now, do I personally think any of these two games are going to return? I don't know. I definitely don't think Mario 64 DS is going to see the light of day again. I'd rather them just honestly make a new remake in the future sometime. But for Mario 3D Land, I feel like the only way we're going to see this game is that they just randomly decide to drop it digitally one day, and it's just like an enhanced 3DS version, something that we've seen with like Luigi's Mansion 2 Dark Moon. That's pretty much all we're going to end up getting. But who knows? We all thought that Galaxy 2 was just dead in the water, but we ended up getting it, Maybe we had to wait for the next console as well, like we did with Galaxy 2. Maybe Switch 3 will give us Mario 3D Land, but whatever happens, happens. I mean, we got pretty much every major Mario game in general on the modern hardware here. So yeah, I mean, outside of some new Super Mario Brothers games and Mario 3D Land, there's not much else left, and that just makes me extremely happy as a Mario fan. But if you excuse me, I gotta go get started on Mario Galaxy 2 once again for like my 18th playthrough. But yeah, it's been a while because I haven't felt like pulling out my Wii U to play it. So finally, I don't have to do that. But thank you guys for tuning in. Do you want to see Mario 3D Land on Switch 2, or do you just not care about the game anymore? Or maybe you never cared about the game. Maybe you just want Mario Pinball Land. But happy Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 re-release day, and have a blessed one, guys.